And okay, there's the recording. So there are four guest editors who made this issue possible, in addition to Carolina, who's in our call and who's responsible for the SDN within the Touchpoint office. They are Maro Rigo, Satu Mitinen, Yifan Gan, and Stefan Moritz. They're all here. I thank you from my side to all of them for really helping to put together what I think was a great issue. You're going to be hearing from Maro specifically. He's going to give a bit of a kind of contextual introduction to the issue and to the event today. The other three editors are present, will hopefully play a role in the roundtable discussion, but don't really have presentations. And I've got to give special thanks to Yifan, who's a guest editor joining from Shanghai. I know it's really not a great time to be awake in Shanghai, but I value that he's here. And then we're going to hear from Bas Rijmakers, from Marshall Sitten, and Yulia Besplamanova. They are the three authors that are part of the event. So I think that's probably as much as I should do for housekeeping and things like that. I would also please ask, keep yourself on mute, certainly in the audience, and for the roundtable and authors, also keep yourselves on mute so we don't disturb other people, other speaking. Let me then introduce Maro. Maro Rigo is working at Google at the moment in Berlin. I think really a renowned expert on the intersection of the worlds of service design and AI. He goes back a long way with the Service Design Network as well, so it's always great to have his input in some of these activities that we do. And as a guest editor, he had the chance to work closely with some authors in the issue and also in general, and I think, if he said it right, refresh himself across all the articles in the issue just recently. So I'd like to begin with him, and he can share his thoughts about the role of an editor and what it was he learned from all the participants. So Maro, the floor is yours.
Hi, thanks, Jesse. Thanks for inviting me, for both being a co-editor, like one of the guest editors, and to talk today. Yeah, as Jess said, like I have a long history with SDN. I think I worked for SDN in 2010, 2011, 12, long time ago when I was still a student, and organized a few of the conferences. So today, I don't want to repeat my talk from the last SDN Global Conference. I think it's probably going to be published soon, or it's already published, so you can have a look into that. So I'm going to focus today more in my experience as an editor, like for the issue, like what I learned from the papers that I saw. Especially because I think the most insightful part is, like, I've been working in this field like since 2017, 18, yeah, 17. And before it was cool. So it was quite interesting to see how that got adopted by the design community, how that the topic landed in the design community. And I'm not aware of most of the discussions that are happening outside of where I am right now. So I'm working at Google. I work at Google Research, and the connection that I have with AI here is way more an infrastructure tool. Like, it's a technology that empowers great experience, but not experience itself. And because of that, like, I kind of locked myself out of what's happening around. And so the issue gave me this first glimpse on what other people are thinking, like how people are using that. And of course, it's a bittersweet situation in which you confronted with something that I don't agree most of the times, and I'm gonna get to that. But at the same time, I cannot neglect that that's happening. So it's like it's something that I have to understand, that why people are using that way, why they feel the need that that's the way that they're using. So great. To give a bit of insight of my background, so I study service design. I work as a service designer, and since I got my first project in AI, I've been working like more as using AI as a material to empower like services that I've been working at Google. Like my recent launch, like I got 2 launches last year, and it was about language learning. So how Google could offer language learning possibilities to like billions of people, and and if you read, like if you look at the product, you can't see any AI happening. So there is no claim about how that's being powered. And that's pretty much how I believe um, where technology flourishes, when they get invisible and works like magic, but it's not claimed as a feature or is not claimed as the main technology behind it. Right. So my thesis go around these lines. I really believe that AI is something that's going to be as commodity as electricity in the future, and going to be automating parts of those services that we experience everyday life. And I saw some of the articles on that. I was really happy to read that the same, like they share the same idea. And I really like Marshall and Julia articulation on that, especially to understand what's the role of service designers on that spot, right? I think there was a really cool insight to understand how we can position ourselves and how can we make ourselves available. And I think they are spot on how they declare that we're gonna be the service designers. I'm including now in the community again. We're gonna be like advocating for how those technologies will automate, and which part of the service makes sense to automate, which part of the service makes no sense to automate, not only from a business point of view, like saving costs or whatever, but also from how the delivery uh, would be better delivered, right? Like how that part of the service will be better delivered. Meaning, where, like for example, customer service. I think the one of the examples from Marshall was exactly that. Like how much of that can be automated, how much of that can be, you need to have a human behind it to actually understand what the person is dealing with. Um, but I saw as well, uh, now comes the part that I don't agree much. I saw as well service designers trying to change or like adopting the tools as part of the framework, as part of the tool set to kind of deliver the service, kind of design services using AI as part of what they do. And I think it's quite interesting to understand that people are trying, like those service designers are trying to automate part of the labor of the deliveries that they have. Let's say summarize research insights, using large language models as well to kind of generate blueprints and kind of like produce those assets, produce those deliverables that kind of shape or make the evidence of our delivery service designer, uh, kind of like make that easier to do. And that comes then I think that triggers a really cool reflection about what's the role of those tools. For example, for me, a blueprint is not something that you deliver at the end of a service, but rather something that you build with your team in order to articulate the dynamic tool in order to negotiate and articulate aspects of a service and build that together and use that throughout the whole service delivery, right? So if a machine deliver that, how that can fulfill the role, right? So, and these are the thoughts. As the same for research analysis, right? um, you One part of the research analysis is actually empathize with the user with together with your stakeholders, right? Like make that process together so you can generate those artifacts that will define and guide the whole service delivery. So that's when the moment that I come to question: do we really want to automate those aspects of our delivery, like of our work? Those deliveries define what we do as service designers. So that's the reflection that I think all of those applications of large language models to service design work triggers. I think the next step, like I think what is coming now to the next phase is we are gonna experience a de-hype of AI. Basically, there is a famous graphic that's showing like people had expectations about what that can deliver, and it's gonna start falling because different level. Like you see a lot of early adopters companies trying to push that into their services and just like shut them down because they're not delivering the high quality, the right quality, or they're actually not saving any money because now all the companies are wants to monetize on top of the model because they're super expensive. Um, but I think that it will bring a maturity for what it brings. So that you're going to have less random applications of large language models, and I know people are trying to experiment and trying to find use case for that, but you're going to see way more reliable and and set. And that gave us a really cool opportunity to understand, like, if you understand what those things can do, and if you have our frameworks on at the hand and our tools, it's going to give us a good leverage on negotiating better services with our stakeholders, understand how can we apply actually the technology the right way, and also creating a narrative that highlight what's the value that we bring to the table in terms of empathy, in terms of creativity as well. So I hope I didn't take much of the time, and if you have any questions, I'm going to be around for later on. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you a lot, Mauro. And I'll just continue. There's actually, this event falls on the heels of an event yesterday evening held by the SDN Dallas chapter, which was also on the topic of service design and AI. And I would encourage you to, if you hadn't participated in that one, to look it up. The Dallas chapter always makes videos of their events available. It was quite different and much more technical, I think, than the event we're going to have. But if you're here because you're interested in the intersection of service design and AI, in addition to reading the journal that we're talking about, I'd also recommend that you go and find a video of yesterday's event from SDN Dallas when they make it available. So again, thanks, Mauro. What I'll do now is we're going to hear the first talk from Marshall Sitton. Marshall is a service design lead for Citi's CX design and orchestration team. And please, whoever's got their microphone off, put yourself on. And he teaches service design for the School of Visual Arts IXD MFA program. Marshall, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thanks, Jesse, and Mauro. Thank you for that great introduction. I really appreciate it. And it was this was a fun, I think, issue to sort of jump into and discuss. My co-authors and I, Emmanuel Franier is a professor at HEG Valais in Switzerland, and my colleague and teammate Aaron Carmen at Citi, who works with me on the CX design and orchestration team. We're often faced with questions of in service design of human expertise versus automation and industrialization, and what happens when that sort of very familiar, very powerful pull in large organizations and large service organizations to automate and industrialize services that were previously the realm of human expertise. What happens? What are some of the challenges that emerge? What are some of the sort of expectations that are raised by those service organizations, and how they sometimes or fairly often can fail the expectations of customers and clients in delivering the same kind of value as a human being. Often these are decisions made in service of cost saving, operational efficiency, a lot of the sort of concepts that we usually sort of associated with scientific management in the past. And that AI is in the eyes of many who are senior leaders in large organizations, including my own at Citi. And I should say, for the record, I'm not speaking on behalf of Citi here. I'm speaking on behalf of myself, even though some of what I'm going to talk about is tapping into my experiences at Citi. But a lot of those things are coming from sort of those same places. And what we've been seeing is that a lot of the conversation, a lot of the discourse around rolling out and adopting AI within large service organizations is taking sort of an unsettling shape of as though it was simply like another type of software upgrade within a big organization. Right, that we're gonna roll out another tool, and it's gonna be like we're rolling out Windows 11 or the newest version of Office or some kind of telephony or something like that, as opposed to something that really has potentially massive implications, both internally for your own employees, and the shape of your organization itself and the future of its strategic direction, including your expenditures, as Mauro very rightly pointed out. but also the implications for the customer and for the business within in the outside world, potentially regulatory issues, reputational issues, lots of these different types of considerations, which are admittedly much tighter at a bank than they might be in other organizations. But what we saw, I saw recently a survey in CNBC conducted with business leaders that 60% of them describe generative AI as being critically important to their business, and named AI as the single largest technology spending budget line item for the next year. At roughly, that one is at roughly 44% of companies. So the hype is being chased pretty aggressively by organizations. A lot of this is, I think, things that we've seen in other types of contexts, like, frankly, fear of missing out, fear of being left behind. Investors, senior leadership, a lot of them are sort of pounding on the table saying, where's our AI solution? Where's our AI? People are asking for it. They're demanding it, without necessarily thinking about some of the things that we as service designers think about quite a bit, which is, what is the problem this is intended to solve, for example. Now, the rush to adoption has caused some pretty funny and some not so funny outcomes, right? I think the news is pretty filled with them, and we cited a couple of them in our article. One big example local to me in New York is the city of New York rolled out an AI-powered chatbot called My City, which was supposed to answer questions for small business owners, other people who have or people who have questions about sort of customer advocacy and protection. And it wasn't very long at all before people noticed that it was giving pretty bad advice, not just sort of dumb advice, but it was advising people to break the law. It was giving people like flatly illegal advice, like you could take half of your waiter's tips if you worked at a restaurant, or telling people the wrong minimum wage, things of that nature, that were just simply, you asked it a straight. It wasn't people trying to trip up the AI or jailbreak it, but rather to just simply get a straight answer to a straight question. Those could potentially have real consequences. So when we look at the role of service designers in a future like this, where there's increasing anxiety about what will our jobs as service designers be at risk in this sort of new AI landscape, but also what can we offer, and do we have to become experts in AI? We argue in the paper that there is, among probably many others, a very critical role that service designers can play as informal risk managers, people who can help their organization with several different areas of potential risk. For example, need finding. What is the actual human customer problem that AI can potentially solve in a given context? Scoping, right? As Mauro mentioned in his introduction, yes, okay, maybe there's a role for AI, but maybe it's bigger and smaller than imagined. Maybe it can be something that is assistive to a human-driven process, or something that can take over relatively low risk, low stake processes that don't require empathy or expertise. Integration, using some of our standard toolkits like blueprints, journey maps, things of that nature, to find where in the line of production AI fits in most competently and smoothly. Things like data integrity, the training of these solutions, what these solutions know versus what they actually need to know in order to behave competently. But then also issues that some of these things that I've seen overlooked quite a bit in conversations I've had with people from other organizations, including my own, which is issues of governance. Things like handling sensitive data or private information, true resolution of issues, understanding when a problem is truly solved, inclusion, right? Is the tool not only accessible to the broadest possible number of people in a technical sense, but also is it excluding people on the basis of culture, race, income, and others, and sort of other factors? Managing bias and discrimination, handling things like abuse, but really some of the things like we saw in the Air Canada example that I cited in our paper, where somebody who was purchasing a bereavement fare was given incorrect information and was forced to pay an exorbitant fee for something on the basis of that information. Well, Air Canada claimed that they weren't responsible for the output of their own tool. So who handles things like accountability, responsibility for solutions, the tracing down and tracking down of problems and finding accountable parties? And then finally, things like a process for auditing to make sure that these solutions are delivering in a safe and meaningful and valuable way. So just to wrap up, as we said in our paper, like these AI solutions are not going to be one size fits all. They're designed to serve real human needs, and so service designers have an absolutely vital role to play within that, as people who can identify and help their organizations manage the risk of these transitions.
Okay, thank you very much, Marshall. As a reminder to everyone, please throw questions that you have for the authors into the chat. It might be something that we pick up on in the roundtable discussion before I get to the audience questions, or it might even stimulate some discussion there. So if questions come up, please put them in the chat. So I'd like to move on now to Yulia Besplanova. She is going to be the second author that we hear from today, and is a partner and service system design lead at Oblo, and a scientific coordinator of servicedesignTools.org. She has a decade of experience and works across diverse sectors, but her primary area of interest and expertise lies in the development of emerging technologies and the intricate systems that they facilitate. So, Yulia, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Jesse. It's a pleasure to be here, especially because I think these events are really helping with the continuity of the research, because actually some parts of the things that I'm going to be talking about, I already presented during also the Service Design Global Conference, and then developed them in the paper, that the article in the Touchpoint. And so, yeah, I'm going to also proceed with this research and tell you how we are thinking about it at Oblo and Service Design Tools currently. So the article that I wrote, which is the representation of our group work by the amazing team of people that we are, that it's a representation of this framework that we're working on to help service designers to work on the new types of services enabled by AI. And so it is based on the work that we started to do already in 2019, when some tech companies was asking us, but like, what's going to be the future of AI like in 5 years from now? And now it's 2024, and we're seeing this development of the AI, and a lot of people are asking, so what kind of cohabitations will we design as the service designers, other types of designers, also in general humanity, seeing what is happening with the Gen AI explosion and hype. So I think one of the interesting inspirations is coming from Garry Kasparov's work. So he was famously defeated by Deep Blue, and instead of desperating, he started this new type of the augmented chess. So where each player, human player, is playing together with the computer and competing with another human and computer couple. So I think the interesting observation that he got from there was that actually weak human and machine with better process was superior than a strong computer alone, or strong human and machine and inferior process. So I think that's a really great opportunity for the service designers as we are designing also those processes, and an inspiration on how to proceed about our work in the future. So at Oblo, what we tried to do is to crystallize our thinking about AI in the past years into kind of new frameworks. So first of all, reviewing the double diamond structure, adding, of course, the part about the adoption and the impact assessment of what we're working on. So with the continuous testing and understanding of the impacts. And here we brought some tools that we're working on. So I'm going to be speaking especially about the first parts, scoping and design, and in the article it's all about those. And then implementation is under development. So for now, we of course, going through a set of the questions on how to design services based on the AI. So what AI can do for humans and services, of course, first of all. And Mauro was making this introduction, talking about the going beyond automation. So thinking about other ways of using AI. So assisting and also augmenting the human capabilities. This is very much applicable to the services because, of course, not all the services are simple as like supermarket or bank transactions, some things that we want to delegate, but a lot of them are more experiential where we like to enjoy the process. So we want to do that and not have AI take it from us. So we have to think about this variety. So to do that, we have developed these different canvases. Specifically, one of the I think main ones is this AI opportunity landscape, where we talk about the overall service, starting from the back end to front end, and mapping all the different actors there, and then thinking about like 3 levels of augmenting, assisting, and automating different elements of the service, with the set of the cards which are representing different tech enablers, which are helping to design and to think and ideate these use cases. Because I think that's also one of the things that was mentioned before about this, finding the use case, finding what's the problem to solve. I think that's the huge issue that we can help now to the organizations. And of course, another way, when we think about more the specifically the user side, thinking about how can we help this particular persona, particular archetype to help them. We also have like different other cards which are helping us to think, what is the AI for them? Is it a superpower? Is it assistant? Is it like actually disturbing someone or something that is not letting them to do their work? So those are interesting questions. And so these are the frameworks which we're using to help us with that. Then, of course, the question of how AI can appear to humans, because we are now talking a lot about the tools and entities. And it's a very tricky part because we are very used to designing tools as a humanity, but design of entities is completely new thing. And we see that with the multiple scandals, even like a Replica, for example, been making a lot of news with their like sexting capabilities of AI and so on. And it's really getting into the dark area, gray zones of the ethical applications and stuff like that. But also there is another part which is about the presence. So it's not even when AI is not even like perceived fully by the user, when it's like noise cancellation earphones, which is the using some elements of AI, not that advanced, but still, or the autofocus in the camera. So that's also a very important part to keep in consideration. And then, of course, there are many more elements that we can add to that to build different AI experiences. So thinking about relational dynamics, the way that it adapts to the users, the way that interactions are structured. So all the AI services can be different because it's not always you need some long-term kind of relations between AI and humans, or service and humans. You might be more interested in understanding and adapting to the context rather than user in other cases, and so on. So these are all the interesting elements to think about. That's only the initial list, and there are many more, but it's an invitation for all the designers to think about the possible ways to, alter and differentiate the services that we're designing. And then, of course, also the question of like which principles can guide us. So here we taken from the work of course, the very renowned principles by Donald Norman, and also service design principles by Elena Pacenti. And we tried to synthesize them, thinking about, again, it's a starting point, what could be interesting design principles for the service designers working with AI specifically. So putting them in the categories which go from things which are more functional to things which can be more kind of aesthetical about the appearance of that services. And here we look at the different principles which can then guide us in the definition of, for example, the experience pillars and the basis for the way that we're going to be thinking about the services. For example, if you think about the self-driving car, of course, one of the most important things to think is how the control is implemented in it. What's the way to get the human in the loop and to have this operator there? Instead, if you're designing something for the, for example, the speaker, the smart speaker, which is listening to people like Alexa or any other kind of that, and which is staying in your house, maybe the discreteness is a more important principle there, which is important to consider. So each of these principles, of course, is important, but some of them can be more applicable to one service or another, and we need to think of that. And then, of course, there's also the question of how the tools, but also the ways that we're thinking of them will be changing. So, of course, AI will bring also differentiation in the new types of journeys. So first of all, in many cases, AI is a kind of, it has this double role because it can be both a kind of interface for the user, but then it can be an agent within a service. So in this way, it can kind of blur the visibility line in our blueprints in a way that it's going to be like in a gray zone, sometimes appearing, sometimes disappearing. And we need to think about the dynamics of that. And of course, also the parts of the different journeys. So for example, how is the onboarding made, considering that the service is intelligent and needs to learn from the user? How is the offboarding made, considering that there is a lot of data which the service has collected? So there are a lot of elements, of course, to think about and to work on. And yes, we're continuing to deal with this. For now, we have released this first canvas, AI opportunity landscape, which you can find on the service design tools platform. And yeah, you can find there this tutorial where we touch upon this framework that I shared with you. And of course, it's described in much more detail in the Touchpoint issue. So yeah, thank you. And please tell me any questions you have, and let's discuss them later.
Thank you so much, Julia. Okay, let's then go right on to our third talk. And after that, we'll get to a discussion amongst the editors and the authors that you've just heard from. To finish up the talks for the evening, I'd like to introduce Bas Rijmakers. He is the co-founder of the design research organizations Standby in London and Amsterdam, and the Reach Network as well. He developed design documentaries as a design research approach at the Royal College of Art, and has been involved in projects for Vodafone, Spotify, Google, the City of Amsterdam, which he and I share as the place that we live, and the Design Council as well as many others. So, Bas, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining today, and thanks everyone who has talked already. It's great to hear your perspectives and to be able to discuss them in a minute. I wrote an article for the Touchpoint with one of my colleagues here, with Katie Barnard, just below me here on the picture. This is our team. For those of you who haven't met us before, I started Standby together with Geke van Dijk some 20 years ago already. And also we are very much kind of involved with a global network that we set up, and that's relevant here because we discuss AI actually quite a bit with this global network as well. And kind of one of the things we learned, for instance, is that AI is definitely not equally present everywhere. AI doesn't speak every language equally well, for instance. Try to do some AI in Bahasa Indonesian and you'll find out. So that's something to really consider when we discuss this topic, I think. But I wanted to start with kind of breeding some confidence in all of us, because I think we've been here before. If you look at kind of other major technical shifts in the past, and I've gone through a few of those actually, we as designers and design researchers have actually helped to shape those changes. So it's not just technology that's kind of washing over us. It's technology that we co-create with other disciplines and that we have a role in creating. And you can see here in just a few lines, I won't read them out, that the role of design and design research also shifts as we go through these roles. So where we first perhaps with design research focused on human-computer interaction, we later really focused on human-centered design, looking more at context and so on, when it was no longer between us and a computer on a desk. And now with artificial intelligence coming onto the scene, I've put some question marks there, because we kind of feel the direction that we need to look at now is more like collaboration and relation building between people and technology, rather than just putting people at the center. We might have to empower users to imagine and inspire them, or to inspire others, and empower users to convince and misinform perhaps as well. So it's not all rosy and shiny here, what's the future that's ahead of us. So kind of if we are taking that historical perspective and we bring all that baggage of understanding technology shifts in society and co-shaping them, what's next in shaping the AI transition? So the article we wrote is really kind of based on some recent and some less recent research we've done with AI and how people already work with AI. Mainly focused, I would say, at the kind of the professional settings where people work with AI. We did a large research for a global think tank that is supposed to inform governments on policy making, on how AI already influences people's work. And from that, we learned a few things that I want to put to you here and that we put into the article as well. One thing is perhaps focused on our own professional circumstances. I think we all experience that AI tools for service design, for design research as well, are coming faster than we can really evaluate their impact. So what can we do about that? I think we, with design research for sure, have the skills and also the experience to create space for service design to kind of reflect on where we want to go. So that's really important, I think, that we take that room for reflection and not just keep being stuck in testing our tools and seeing if it works for us or not. The second one is, as with any big technical change, we really have seen in our research so far that AI creates tension between those who adopt and those who don't. There's clearly skill and trust gaps between people, sometimes also between teams or between organizations, and we need to be aware of those. Some people will take longer to adapt to AI, for instance, because they don't speak English very well. Other people are not so trusting AI because of some of the experience that Marshall, for instance, talked about. So we need to consider kind of how can we investigate those gaps. In design research, we really like gaps, and we because that's basically research opportunities, and I think we can position ourselves in there, just like we looked at digital skills gaps already for a long time. The third one here is there are many tensions around AI as a new colleague we found, especially in work settings. People can feel lost, people can feel ashamed or confused. So lost because their organization doesn't give them very good guidance on how to use AI and when it's possible to do that or allowed to do that. They can feel ashamed. They feel sometimes they're cheating if they let do some of the work that they would normally do themselves by an AI. And they can be really confused by the results of AI they use or kind of things that come to them from other people who use it. So there's a real role here for design research, we feel, to map what collaboration with AI looks like, not just for designers and service designers, but for everyone who works with AI. And from mapping that kind of collaborations, we can kind of discuss with teams and with people where they want to take AI, where would it fit actually in their ways of working. So this is kind of where we want to take that next. How can we use AI in our teams? And let me first do a shout out to Marcus, who is also in the audience, I saw, who wrote this Teaming with AI white paper with 10 perspectives. And we think this is a really good direction to further explore, because there's so little known actually in our professional environment yet about how teams can deal with AI. It's all about individuals. So we actually teamed up with Marcus, and we are developing a perspective on how we can help teams with AI, how we can help them to develop tools to kind of look ahead and to create their own roadmaps for working with AI. And we're doing that based on about 10 years of work of the Standby Design Research team on kind of working on how teams actually use digital tools, including AI. We've done about 8 years of work for the Google Workspace team and the Google Calendar team before that, to kind of see how can we improve the use of digital tools and AI, machine learning, and so on. So with that, I think I want to conclude. And I have a question for all of you. How's the relationship of your team with AI, rather than just yourself? Thank you.
Thank you, Bas, and thank you for all the authors. And maybe actually, if I can use that as a beginnings of a discussion amongst the roundtable. So we've got Bas and the other two authors who participated, and we've got our 4 guest editors here. First, I'd like to say it's nice to see the connection, Bas, between yourself and Marcus, another contributor on that work for service design or AI for teams. Great outcome of the issue. But let's maybe take that as a discussion for the roundtable. Bas, you can, if you like, feel free to repose it. You've got 4, 5, 6 people to hopefully hear and provide an answer. Great.
Yeah, I'm kind of wondering first, perhaps, have you considered AI as a new team member? Because that would be a question, I think, that's coming to us quite quickly, rather than an assistant of some of the work that you're doing. Perhaps I should give one example of the direction that we're looking at. We see an opportunity, for instance, for AI to become the librarian on our team. And we would love to have a librarian on our team, because we have an archive of 20 years of work that nobody really can have in the top of their head. So to mine that, we really need a librarian, and AI could perhaps be that librarian on our team.
Marshall.
Can I answer your question with a question?
No, of course, it's a debate.
Is this under the assumption that whatever it is we pick would be in some kind of future state in which it really works? Because I think some of the things that we might want to do with AI as a teammate, we in its current state can't trust it to do, but we would very much want to be able to do it that way. So
yes, of course, like with any new team member, you need to get on your team. You want to interview them beforehand, and you want to build trust with them over time based on what they achieve as well.
Well played. That said, so yeah, I would say that I mean we're very restricted right now in what we're able to do at the bank anyway, with regards to AI. It's right now it's extremely restricted for mostly regulatory reasons, but also other operational and reputational reasons as well. But I think that internally, the things that we just can't ever manage to find the time to do in resource constrained environments, right? We're a fairly small team with big responsibilities and giant projects. And a lot of the time we simply can't find things, or we can't create systems of documenting research evidence, our work product in a way that creates a sort of structured and standardized institutional knowledge base that can proceed forward. And it feels to me like if it were if it could deliver on that promise, it might be the kind of thing that AI could really be helpful with.
Satu.
I think it's good to keep in mind the whole area of design when we talk about AI, like thinking both design horizontally and vertically, and somehow also all the different positions. We still have, like people working in operative jobs, tactical jobs, and strategic jobs. So I would think that for some of the jobs we already have AI as a team member. I was interviewing Surya Vanka on last Monday. He's with IDSA, International Design, Industrial Design Association of America, and he was telling that last year a lot of jobs, design jobs, were already lost to AI in US. So, like I think the most simple and mundane tasks will be done by AI as a team member. Maybe what we would like to have AI as a team member would be more, more intelligent jobs. I think some more
Yes.
productive jobs that could help us to solve problems. I think one of the, I don't anymore remember who was it of the presenters who was saying that, it was something about solving problems. So I somehow think that even designers have been, traditionally seen as problem solvers. Probably that creates the best design there is, that when you have a real problem to solve and you solve it, and now we are kind of trying to look role for AI. Is it a teammate? Is it someone doing the mundane jobs? What is the role of it? I think it's good that we are asking that question. I made a kind of room table for myself from the articles in the current journal. And I think we are quite, when you look at the discussions around AI and design, you find the kind of ground rules quite quickly, like this, like do no harm, understand that AI is limited, it is not representing everyone. I think that's the biggest challenge to overcome, that it is based on the text mass that there is if you talk about generative AI. And many cases in service design, we are trying to fight for equity. So I think there's a lot of job to be done, because it's not really, somehow you have to be super critical. And I think when you work AI as a teammate, you really need to have a good research skills, because you have to have somehow very good understanding of research and critical approach to understand, okay, what I can trust, what I cannot trust. Because I think there's a lot of information that you can utilize, but you have to have some basic set of skills to pick and choose. Okay, I already talked far too long. Thank you.
Thanks, Sato. Go ahead, Mauro. I saw you raised your hand.
Yeah, I think the first thing that gets to my mind is that there is a mixed match with AI and LLMs in general, like large language models. Like you expect them to be like specific, like they generate language, basically. And AI is a field of study, like it's a field that's encompass way more things that we are dealing with, like talking about different ways of training, different kind of generations, and so forth. I think that's the first distinction, because when you ask, for example, if I'd like to have a colleague, like which kind of job we give to this colleague and so on, I would think way more in direction of who I would, like, for example, you said the librarian, right? Like you already have the mental model that you have is a job that the person would execute, and expect this person to have kind of like this is a humanized way of dealing with that problem, right? Like librarian, like, and then you have a mental model and you have an affordance for that specific job. And when you break down the tasks that you want from that person, right, like kind of retrieval information, find stuff, and so on and so on, then you get to a point that actually now you can start designing tools that can, this person doesn't, that this materialize this position, and you get that at your fingertips whenever you and whenever you go, whenever you need it. So that person doesn't exist anymore. So you don't have anymore a colleague, but basically whenever you say, hey, I would like to have all my research from the last 10 years, or tell me about this topic based on the research that we have done, it appears directly on your docs that you're working on. So, and that's a kind of a distinction. I think that's really important, that we still have a really anthropomorphic way of thinking those tools, because they are, because it's cool to think them like the way that they advertise is always a human, and that's fascinating, and that's the thing that makes them magical, and like you have so much hype around them, because they kind of like, it's almost like the chess the chess machine. There was like the Turkish machine, I guess that was the name, the Turkish computer. There was this machine that was like a person inside, but people are fascinating for the fact that like now a machine can play chess, right? But there was a person inside. But the fact was not like the idea was not the automation, but like it can do something like a human can do, and that's has been our drive, and that's go on a philosophical level of what we're expecting and so on. But yeah, I would not transfer. I would not make an AI or automated system to replace a colleague, but rather dehumanize that position and think more like which kind of things I want to have, and how the machine can give that to me.
Julia, I saw you also raised your hand.
Yes, yeah, thank you. I wanted to support some points that also Satu and Mauro said also before, and also something that I saw in the chat in discussion, because I did quite a lot of research on trying, especially the custom GPTs in the research part of the work, especially in like stress testing it in a situation where I was just the only researcher on a very like extreme project that we normally don't do that way, and so I had to use AI as a kind of last resort there to for the synthesis. And my experience with that was that definitely it can help you in that situation, because someone was saying in the chat that when you don't have much team, or you're like a freelancer working remotely by yourself, you start using those tools. But exactly as it was mentioned, I think you should consider that it absolutely requires you to have a knowledge of what you're doing. So I wouldn't suggest anyone to leave it with the more junior people, or people that are just starting to learn some skills and getting experience in this field, because definitely there's still a lot of room for errors and misinterpretations, and you need to be able to control the output, and know what makes the good output. So based on your experience. And another part also, Mauro was saying about the anthropomorphizing. In my experience, I eventually defined the role of AI as a kind of alien intern, in terms of like alien, because it was completely having a completely different mental model of, and I understood that relationship was completely different. You had to explain things that you never would have to explain to a human. For example, when you give a transcript and it doesn't understand how many people are interviewed, and you need to explain that here are like 16 people that were interviewed and stuff like that, because it has completely different way of cognition, which if we can call it that way. So first you need to explain those technicalities, and then intern in terms of, yes, you need to really explain the process, and also a lot of hand-hold in there. So reminded that, you miss this person, you have to review better the prompt, review the transcript and stuff like that. So there's a lot of work there. So it's absolutely not a magical, automating tool, but it's a continuous iteration. And I think, yeah, if you're in a stressful situation, don't have the human colleagues, or you want to help them, it's a very useful tool. But of course, there are a lot of considerations before making it really worthy there.
Thanks. I'd like to, Buzz, maybe I'll give you the close for this, and then give another question to the roundtable.
Yeah, thanks. Just a brief response. It wasn't indeed my view to replace any people on the team with an AI. The idea was to add kind of entities to the team that you couldn't have before, really, because you wouldn't have the funding for instance, to have those. And on anthropomorphizing, what we have noted is that people are kind of really stuck in this idea of being more productive, efficient, and having an assistant. And their anthropomorphizing really helps to come up with other kind of ways of thinking about AI. Librarian is one, but it could also be a therapist or perhaps a teacher. So we can come up with many more, and that helps us to broaden the idea where we can take this. And that's the kind of discussion we would like to have.
Great. I actually can say one of the other articles, we don't have it being presented here, was in the issue, came from people at Futurists. And speaking about, I see it both in the chat, the concept of a librarian, but expanding the team. In their article, they write about creating an AI which helps them to build proposals. So it goes, the salespeople of the agency are able to go and say, find case studies that Futurists have done in the past and meet this sector, this kind of criteria, and bring them back. And the way they describe it is it helps facilitate the whole process of trying to get new business in this kind of librarian role. I'd like to ask another question, perhaps, and Julia, it's triggered by something that you said in your talk about how service designers are typically trying to find the right problems to solve. If you forget about AI, that's something we should be good at doing. Considering that AI can be applied to a lot of different problems, I'm interested from the whole panel, really, what you see as the right problems that service designers should solve with AI, and what are the things that we could be doing where we should not use AI? And in those cases, why do you think it's something that we shouldn't use? So throw it to yourselves, either raise your hand or unmute yourself and jump in.
Maybe I just, it was almost telepathy because I wrote something like that in the chat. I think in this whole AI and design discussion, I've been now involved in many of these discussions, and it's not so much, I think I agree with Bas that it's not so much about, like either or, but it's thinking about what can AI do in that problem? Like what is the level that AI can contribute to solve this problem, but most probably, at least until now, you will also need a designer or human being to take the problem solving into the end. But definitely, I think anything which is to do with equity and representation, at the moment, it's not something you can rely AI on because it's so biased. Like, I think if you would look for pictures of design managers, you would probably get white middle-aged males in the pictures. I think they are trying to change this, but still, it's very biased understanding and of course, thinking about all the varieties that AI can do. Now it's been so hip to talk about these generative language models. But then, of course, I think before this became so popular, it was all about help bots. I think there are a lot of things that AI can do in addition to these language models. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Satu. Anyone else? Marshall?
Yeah. I mean, our paper was sort of based around the notion of a very clear role for service designers as informal risk managers at sort of all various different stages, forms, and places of intervention with the integration of and adoption of AI. I see things like the places where tacit knowledge, real human expertise, empathy, understanding of culture, and understanding, trying to escape bias. To Satu's point, I think that the idea that there are certain, well, let me put it this way. I think part of the service designer's potential role here is sort of a dangerous one, in that it is one where, and I mean dangerous in terms of career limiting, because I think a lot of the discussions that I've been having internally seem to trend towards me saying, hey, like, slow down. We have to slow down. You know, there are questions we've not answered. There's questions we've not even asked. There's things that I'm seeing things moving at the sort of the pace of minimum viable product, which I think is a very problematic and potentially disastrous approach to take when you're looking at adopting such a potentially transformational technology with so many potential implications and possibilities of risk, and and just simply not even understanding what the use case even is, what the problem is you want to solve, like you were indicating earlier. Like for example, we were doing some service design research around a part of the account opening process at City, and one of the things that we discovered through some interviews, and really it came up as a result of doing semi-directed interviews and kind of going a little bit off topic, was understanding about the demand for AI as a sort of customer-facing technology. And there was a lot of sort of positivity from from customers we spoke to and potential customers we spoke to around AI, saying, yeah, we'd love it. But when you dig into that and you ask more about the sort of why behind that, it has so much less to do with excitement and around the potential of this particular technology than it had to do with people's individual experiences with things like customer service, stuff like that, where really what they want and their conception of AI is, like Julius put it earlier, magic. They think about it, the way that they think about it and talk about it is indistinguishable from magic. We want something that's always right, always on, always available, sounds and acts like a human, has is basically omniscient and can deliver things very quickly, in the same exact way that the world's most knowledgeable and professional human could do. Which says a lot more, to my ear as a service designer, it says a lot more about other things that are happening around those customer experiences than it speaks to a real aggressive demand for AI. But that's a difficult place to put you as a service designer, because it puts you it puts you as an obstacle in the way of progress in the eyes of those who are rushing to adopt. So there are some other the part of those. I think that's a piece of our role there is to be a voice of reason. But I do acknowledge that there's risk there of sort of being seen as the sort of the party pooper and an obstacle to progress.
Mauro.
Yeah, I had a conversation today about that with a colleague, and I think it was interesting the question was, what part of the service, or what I would replace with AI or what's not, right? Like how I would apply that. And my baseline is that services are actually friction between you and your goal. Like you, for example, when you talk about going to New York, flying to New York, you actually want to be in New York. You don't want to take the airplane. And like all the design that you do in between is to make that friction as painless as possible. The same goes like going to the cinema, like the buying the ticket and so on, and picking the film. All of those things, like you just want to watch the film. And I think that what AI, what this technology can provide is actually reduce that space between you and the goal that you have. And part of those processes is going to be like whatever is possible to do in that sense. Let's say shopping, for example, anything that goes in the digital field going to be eventually automated and be taken by agents. And agents are basically automated entities that would take the job for you, like would do that job specific for you based on what you're looking for. So so answering the question is, I think we should think about using those technologies on things that we can reduce that friction, right? Like not be like making that cheaper for the service provider, make that more controllable for the service provider. In the end of the day, AI is a technology for the service provider. It's not a technology for for the end user. Like it doesn't make it better. It enable better experience, but at the end of the day, solving a problem from the who's providing the service and not who's using it. Doesn't provide. That's at least my baseline. And I think that anything that goes in that direction should eventually will adopt that technology.
Can I want to push back against something that you said earlier about the sort of premise of services as friction and friction as bad. For me, I mean, my co-author and mentor, Professor Franier, he tortured me with this lecture of the origin of services in the Paleolithic era, and sort of the idea of services as a way, as sort of the glue that binds society together. It helps us find meaning with each other, right? And there are, I would believe, and I would posit, necessary and positive frictions that occur that in services that, you know what I mean? They create things the unexpected and delightful things that happen, or things that illuminate you in other directions, and that efficiency or optimization as the sort of top or preeminent goal, that really does, to the second part of what you said, that does serve the service provider more than it serves the goal of those who use services. And so I would caution about the idea that by eliminating those frictions, we're creating something better. We're creating something that meets a specific need, but not necessarily a universal need.
Not at all. I totally agree with you. Like, not at all. And that's the posing question, right? Like, what we want to automate, right? Think about all the ticket counters from flying companies, right? Like,
yeah.
Do we like what kind of experience is that? It's shitty, right? Like, I don't know. So that's the point. Like, that's the polemic. That's the statement that I want to bring to on that discussion.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Yeah, I wanted to add to that exactly, because also about the services as frictions, and automation. When I put that access basically from automation to augmentation, that was also the point, because when we were thinking of that, of course, some services are like that you want to delegate them and get rid of them, but some services like restaurant, spa, you want to experience it, and there you want to augment that experience. But it's not only that. Also, when we were working, thinking about what are the use cases for the AI-based phone and stuff like that, you think that some people would say groceries is something I want to delegate, or like cooking in general. And some people, I live in Italy, would say, no, cooking is a part of the culture. It's not like just the basic need and, to get the energy, but it's really cultural. It's my self-expression and so on. So I think regarding the question of what are the problems, it's difficult to say, because of course, before we lived in this state where there was this humans are better at, machines are better at paradigm, and you could like match them. But now with the AI, Gen AI specifically, it seems that machines are coming to the part where humans used to be, like in all the intellectual things and processing the language and stuff like that. But the problem there is that, okay, so now how do we navigate that? Because apparently we're not going to be delegating to robots our groceries soon, but instead machines are going to be like writing the text for us. And so I think that's where the power of service design is coming, that we need to really look at each specific case and see what humans in that organization or the users of the service prefer, and which are the different cases for them. So I think there's not going to be easy response to that, but we need to bring all our capacity of research and understanding humans to design those best things for them. Of course, considering that there's going to be the interest of the companies behind and the managers, which are going to be saying that, we can cut the cost because AI is already good enough, even if it's not reaching the human level. And so that's where we need to do that risk mitigation, of course.
Can I add one small thing to that, Jesse?
Go ahead.
Arching back also to what Satu said at the start about bias. I think it's kind of naive to think that we will get beyond that point of bias. If we compare, for instance, to TV, we've had like how many? 7 decades of television. And we had 7 decades to work on making TV kind of unbiased. I don't think we are there yet. So how would we actually expect to do that for AI? I think it's a much more fruitful approach here to kind of look at transparency and kind of avoid a black box. So understanding which bias exists and why we might want to have a certain bias, because that kind of plays into what Julia just said as well. From certain cultural backgrounds, you might want to have a certain way of looking at how things are done and how services are created. So you want to have that bias, actually. You may want to have a female bias for certain things, or you might want to have an Italian bias for certain things. So that's something that to me is about transparency. Where is this coming from, rather than bias? Bias in itself is not bad, I think, as long as we know where it's coming from.
Maro, do you want to respond? I saw you had your hand up.
Yeah, I will also want to say
Satu.
something.
Sure. Go ahead, Satu.
Yeah, I think we were not saying, like what we want or not. We were just saying that it is biased, that you need to understand it is biased. And I would disagree very much that bias is okay. I don't think it depends so much on the context. So I would strongly argue against accepting bias. I of course I'm activist by heart, so I need to oppose that.
Yeah, bias has a very bad rap, obviously, but it is a perspective and a skewed kind of view on something that might fit for certain purposes. So if we understand what the bias is, I mean, BBC has a bias. Still, we like BBC News, or many of us do, right? But it has a bias. So as long as we understand, I think it's possible to live with it.
I think transparency, I think, is a way of, I think it's one of many powerful ways to try to mitigate it. Because I don't think, I think bias is, there's bias that harms, there's bias that some like you said, facilitates bias. But the one thing about it that maybe we could all agree on is that it's inescapable, and that and I think one of the ways in which we could approach potentially AI in a way that maybe is better than, like Boz indicated, like the writers' rooms of television shows and things of that nature that have been sort of like dictated culture, is through inclusive design approaches that really do bring more people in to the process of design and evaluation and understanding risk and shaping and auditing and sort of iterating on these tools in ways that don't leave anybody out, that don't leave people on the outside looking into a society that's moving towards more of these automated tools.
Any other? Otherwise, what I'd like to do is actually, I've seen a lot of great overlap between questions that were coming up in the audience, being covered a little bit by discussions within the roundtable itself. I would actually like to maybe pick up on a question that Marcus has asked, and that is, while service design tools are always there to be adapted and to fit change to fit our context, our audience, and our projects, he feels like what he's hearing is that we need to step up our game with AI specifically. So if his question here is, how do we, or how do you as the panel, expect our tool set to change? What are the tools that are visible on the horizon that we should be using? How do we change to adapt to the presence of AI? Maro, go for it. But you're on mute, so we can't hear you yet.
Sorry. It may not be the answer that Marcus wants, because I saw the other questions around. I think have a literacy on what is the difference of the models, the kind of things that you can take out of them, and how to apply them when implementing services. I see a lot of usage. I see examples of people using different tools for speeding up some of the work that they do as a service designers. I don't think they speed up your, like, of course, they speed up your understanding of the tools, but like in that specific segmented experience. So you can become a really good consultant for how to use what is available in the market right now to be a faster service designer. But they don't give you, I think they give you little insight on how can you apply that, how can you use them into when implementing services, what part of the service can you actually change. So that's not enough. Like only have that experience. I don't think that will, like I see a lot of people calling themselves AI experts right now on LinkedIn, especially LinkedIn. And basically the experience that they have is like they have been prompting ChatGPT in different ways. And then all the experience that they have just get wiped out in the next release because the model that was trained is now different. Like they have a different way of prompting and so on. So that understanding, like understanding how to prompt and so on, it doesn't bring much to, but understanding that you have to talk like a child with those things, or those things that don't have a context, also going to change soon because those models going to be like get an in device and they're going to be like specialized. So whatever, like you have to understand the material. And I think getting deep into material and experiment with that, implementing to services, trying to prototype services with those materials, I think that's a really valuable way of getting ahead and speed up your experience.
Satu?
I think I completely agree with what Mauro was saying. I think it's good to remind us that we can also play a strategic role. And I think especially in service design. So I think that's also important to remember that we are not there to compete with some AI tasks, but we should have like more holistic understanding where to use, where to apply it, and what kind of problems it can solve.
Totally agree. I feel like it's an extension of the, and this is a sort of boring and bland take, I admit, is that the way we teach, practice, and understand service design, I think already prepares us with a lot of this sort of base understanding of how to approach AI and integrating or adopting AI. But it does require, like Mauro put it, you have to understand the problem territory, just like you would for any other realm of services and service design. You know, I have to understand banking products, even though I'm basically enumerate as a person. Like I'm terrible at math and finance, but I have to become, I have to get over that and understand how banking works in order to apply the tools of the craft to it in a meaningful way. I don't know that there is a special AI centric tool for these things that would help increase understanding or facilitate a better process. I think understanding and just simply doing the work of knowing, so that it doesn't turn out to be like what we saw with social media, where like Mauro said, like every 2 weeks somebody would declare themselves on, like there'd be another 100,000 people calling themselves social media experts, then everything changes, and then everything changes again. And you've got a world full of sort of hacks and grifters who don't really know that much and are doing more damage than good.
Any more, Buzz? Your hands raised?
Yes, I would kind of like to point at an area where we can expect great benefits from new tools. I don't know how those tools would look like yet, but that's where I would experiment, is understanding problems, in particular wicked problems, better. Based on the research that we do, I think AI could really help us raise our game in understanding the situations, problems better than we do now. If you look at how AI in very different fields has made a lot of progress, I see a potential there for design as well. And if we understand problems in new ways, or situations in new ways, or people in new ways, we can also start to design in very different ways, I think.
Unless there's someone else from the panel who wants to jump in, I want to pick up another question that I saw coming from Aaron, and it's one that I have myself. I touched on it a little bit in the editor's letter, and that is how do you suggest service designers who, and I'll put my hand up and be amongst them, who don't have a lot of experience of applying it in our work, educate themselves to become capable to do it, not only to understand how it can be applied in the delivery of a service, which I think is what Mauro where he really sees the value as I understand it, but also how it can be applied to support us in doing our work and maybe even doing some of our work for us. What can service designers do? Where can they learn about this? Are there examples of projects that you've seen? Are there free courses you've heard of? What, as the panel, will you point to as maybe a single great resource for service designers wanting to learn about AI? If I don't get to all of you, please also put your answer in the chat if that's possible. But whoever wants to jump in with a great resource for starting service designers in AI, I'm keen to hear it.
Jesse, I put it up there in the chat that, you know, we are running a workshop on this, like how to utilize AI to create personas and service journeys. And have to remind, this is not to replace research and service designer, but to get kind of initial understanding and maybe then better plan your research. But at least I think we have a version of that workshop that can be also like, how do you say, you can walk that on your own, that it's something you can execute on your own. So if anyone is interested, we are really happy to share this. It's Kibong Nam who is working with this at our research team, and he'll be really happy to share this resource to anyone who is interested.
That would be great. Any other, Mauro, I saw you put something in the chat, a link for people to follow. Any other resources that you all recommend as starting points for this?
I did a plug already for teaming with .ai. I can type it in the chat again.
Okay, perfect.
That's a plug for you, Marcus. It's a white paper that has kind of exercises you can do as well with your team, which would be really helpful, I think, to get going.
I mean, I don't have a direct. I have the pair book that I shared. Like the guidebook is more theoretical and kind of like help you to navigate how to design products and services with AI. That's from the team from research. It's very good. I liked a lot. Go really basic. The another source that I have, and I think that can bring a bit more ideas. Like it's more the technical part of it. Like I think there is a lot of tools that you can plug and play, ChatGPT and Gemini and so many others. Like, and there is like derivative products like the Notebook LM that I share also in the chat. Like they can give you like those tools to kind of speed up your, but they are like ready-made tools. You have to learn how to prompt them and so on. And or you can go the way that I did when I was like really in the beginning. That's pretty much refining your own model. Use Code Lab, and there is like so many resources that you can. Like you don't have much experience, like you just need a bit of Python to understand that. But just like I think the biggest problem is actually to understand what you want to speed up. Like why you're using this AI for that. Like let's say if you're doing for about getting research insights, right? So you have to have clear what problem you're trying to solve, and then you can actually refine the model using Python to go around the things that for you is important. So creating the bias that for you is relevant to understand, to extract that from our work, right? So I would recommend like going any kind of like small course in Code Lab, and learn a bit of Python. That would be helpful for you to understand the material in the best way.
Okay, thanks. We've just got a couple minutes to go, and for anyone else on the panel who hasn't gotten a word in on any of the topics, I'd like to give you the opportunity to do it. Again, I'm half distracted myself watching a really interesting chat, so if you have only been listening to what people have been saying in the video, make sure to have a read through the chat discussion as well. If there are no other final words from the panel, I'd again like to thank everyone who participated, all the guest editors who made this issue possible, all the authors, some of whom you heard, some who you didn't hear from today, but made contributions. Again, it was a really fascinating issue. Touchpoint is a benefit of membership of the SDN. Any of you who are a member of the SDN have gotten Touchpoint for free. However, if you're not a member, of course, I recommend you go and get a copy of it. Carolina can share the chat the link to Touchpoint on our website. We have issues in PDF, and of course you can order it in printed form as well. We are busy with one more issue coming up. I mean, the next issue coming up, it's not going to be our last one, is on the interdisciplinarity of service design, also quite an interesting topic. We've got editors busy with it as well, and authors have submitted their articles already a couple of weeks ago. So that should be coming out in the not too distant future. And we're hoping potentially to have a Touchpoint related event like this on the stage in Helsinki. The SDN's global conference will be beginning of October in Helsinki. I hope I see some of you there. I expect to see some of you there. Thank you again for this great event. Keep the discussion going. And I hope to see you at the next Touchpoint Roundtable. Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you, Jesse. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah.